Jim Harbaugh, after 9 years with Michigan football, he's led them to 3 straight Big Ten titles. Recently, they won the national championship, and he's left for greener pastures in the NFL, taking the head coaching job for the LA Chargers. What's next for Michigan football post Jim Harbaugh? Sherrone Moore is expected to be the leading candidate to replace him as head coach. He was their interim head coach when he was serving that suspension out of nowhere during the season, when we saw them clobber Ohio State once again. They beat Maryland. Sherrone Moore, if he ends up getting the reins to the program to replace Jim Harbaugh, that would be a perfect fit. I wouldn't expect any big transfers because most of these recruits already have a good relationship with Sherrone Moore. The majority of the players that are already on the roster have already developed a strong likeness towards Sherrone Moore. You see, this isn't one of those situations like it was when Nick Saban retired and Kalen DeBoer got hired by Alabama, because if you hire from within, then that's going to give the players more incentive to not want to transfer out because they're already playing for a head coach who they have familiarity with. And talking with the player that goes to the university that I currently attend, he said the number reason why players transfer when there's a coaching change is because you don't know what to expect from the new head coach. Are you going to be a good fit in the new scheme that they're going to run? Are you going to mesh well with the new head coach from a personality standpoint? Michigan players aren't going to have to ask themselves that question if they just go ahead and promote Sherrone Moore to getting the permanent title as head coach. Now, if you go elsewhere, let's say you go after a guy who's rumored to be in this head coaching search, guys like Matt Rule, Chris Kleiman with Kansas State, Lance Leopold with Kansas, or Luke Fickell with Cincinnati. You bring one of those guys in from the outside of this program, then okay, then those players are probably going to start having second thoughts of whether or not they should stay or if they should leave. But if you keep Sherrone Moore, your recruiting class shouldn't take that big of a bump. And I don't really think that the recruiting is going to get hurt by this decision anyway, regardless of what transpires, because I'm pretty confident that a lot of these players who committed to Michigan were under the understanding that Jim Harbaugh could leave at any time. So Sherrone Moore will make this transition so much easier, but even if they hire another guy outside of the Michigan football program, I still expect for the majority of this roster to stay intact, and they're going to have a fairly new team next season. They have a lot of the veterans from this year's team that are now moving on to the NFL. You're going to have Donovan Edwards coming back and maybe a couple of other noteworthy veterans back in that locker room for 2024. But outside of that, you're going to have a lot of new faces that are going to be starting for the Wolverines in 2024. Sherrone Moore, if I was making this decision, he without a doubt would be my pick. Some people say Jesse Minter should get a look at this job. He also did a fantastic job and what his role was with Michigan, being their defensive coordinator, but I couldn't see him taking this head coaching job. I would be a little bit surprised if he doesn't actually follow Jim Harbaugh to the NFL, because Jesse Minter, he's more of an NFL guy in my opinion. He's a guy who's groomed to be an NFL head coach, not a college football head coach. But if he ends up getting the nod for being their next head coach and you go with Jesse Minter instead of Sherrone Moore, then I don't think that would be too bad of a decision either. Both of these two guys are outstanding assistant coaches, and they will make for great head coaches, rather if it be with Michigan or anywhere else they go. And Jesse Minter and Sherrone Moore, if Jim Harbaugh was to stay for another season, they probably would have gotten head coaching opportunities elsewhere for sure in 2025. So you have two potential head coaches in waiting, whether it be Jesse Minter taking a head coaching job at the college or NFL level, and Sherrone Moore, if he doesn't get the head coach job for Michigan, he definitely is going to get it somewhere else. He's a fantastic coach. Anytime you can beat your rival in the biggest game of the season, being the interim head coach, that shows that you know what you're doing. What they did against Penn State with Sherrone Moore was absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen a team rally behind the interim head coach the way that Michigan was able to rally around Sherrone Moore when Jim Harbaugh was out with that suspension. Sharon Moore, he pretty much has the same philosophy that Jim Harbaugh has. He's tough. He wants to be physical. He puts a lot of emphasis on making sure that the line of scrimmage is up to par on both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line. Anytime you run the ball 31 straight times, that's a mentality thing. That's a physicality thing. That's a mindset that, hey, we're bigger than you, we're stronger than you, and we're more physical than you, and we're going to prove it. Sharon Moore, like Jim Harbaugh, I don't think that the offense is going to change too much. How the program is ran isn't going to change that much. Hell, with Sharon Moore, he could take what Jim Harbaugh already has bestowed upon him and build upon it and make it even better. You see, Urban Meyer left Ohio State in very great shape when he handed it over to Ryan Day. And in some aspects, Ohio State football has been a little bit better when it comes to recruiting. They're way better recruiting under Ryan Day than what they were under Urban Meyer. Now, you can say that's because of the transfer portal and NIL, but whatever. What Jim Harbaugh, the current infrastructure that he has left behind at Michigan, should make it easy for a guy like Sharon Moore to pick it up and make it better. Michigan football has the possibility of being even better under Sharon Moore than what they are or what they were under Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh didn't leave Michigan in shambles. Yeah, they may get some penalties handed down to them from the NCAA, but you can bounce back from that. The NCAA, they're really inconsistent when it comes to their punishment. I still really don't know what the hell you're being punished for because everybody else is still in signs, but the way you did it was against the rules. So if you have to lose a couple of scholarships, cool, but with the transfer portal and everything else and the resources that you have, you should be able to overcome anything that the NCAA throws at you, especially if you keep Sharon Moore. They already had the mindset last year that it was Michigan versus everybody. Now you put some more sanctions on them, and maybe you try to say that their national championship win doesn't count and you might want to vacate it. It still won't matter because deep in those players' hearts, they know what they did. You can't take away winning a national championship from somebody. And whatever penalties you hand down, the team and the players on this roster are going to use that as motivation for next season. And we saw what happened when they were already motivated last year. Imagine if you just give them a full off season of motivation where, you know, they lost their head coach, you hand down penalties on them, you try to vacate their title win if that ends up being one of the penalties that you want to punish them with. For what transpired with the whole sign stealing thing, that's cool. But one thing about Michigan football is that this program has a lot of heart and a lot of toughness. And if Sharon Moore gets this job from Jim Harbaugh, I expect him to build upon what Jim Harbaugh has already set in that locker room as a president. You know, they like to use these kinds of situations as fuel to keep winning. So if I'm Michigan, I think that your new head coach is right in front of you, and many people are expecting for Sharon Moore to end up getting this job. If they go elsewhere, the names are Lance Leopold, Chris Kleiman at Kansas State, Dave Clawson, Matt Rule, Luke Fickell, but it just would be in Michigan's best interest to promote from within with Sharon Moore, because this late into the coaching carousel, do you really want to risk bringing a guy from outside of the program who ends up causing most of your roster to transfer, and then it's way too late to try to counteract those transfers in the transfer portal until the other transfer portal window opens up in a couple of weeks? So it just makes sense for Michigan just to hire from within, to save themselves the trouble of hiring a new head coach from outside the program like a Chris Kleiman, even though Chris Kleiman is going to get a big-time job sooner rather than later for the job he's done at Kansas State. But this late into the coaching carousel, for any head coach that would have any small interest taking over for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, you have to deal with the potential penalties that you're going to get from the NCAA, and then you're going to have to worry about the roster overhaul. You're going to have players leaving for the portal. You're going to have some of your guys leaving your previous program to come transfer to your new program. Who just wants to deal with all that? Michigan could save themselves the hassle, save themselves the drama and trouble if they just go ahead, make Sharon Moore the interim head coach. That's what I expect to happen.